WandaVision episode 5 is here, and it changes the entire game once again, not only for the show and all of the characters involved, but for the MCU and possibly all Marvel movies that have ever come before. It's actually not as much hyperbole as you might think. Let's break it down. What's up, everybody? It's Josh. Welcome back to the channel. Smash that like button, and I do want to remind you that a large part of what we are doing here at the Den of Nerds is taking place over on our live streaming channel, and we did do a big spoiler-filled discussion right after the show aired, episode 5. I did a long stream just kind of talking about all sorts of crazy stuff. You might want to check that out as well.
I'm going to take a look.
A couple of things to take care of right off the bat. Obligatory spoiler warning if somehow you think you can watch a breakdown video of an episode without being spoiled for that episode, you're crazy, so spoiler warning. Number 2, WandaVision is insane, and there's so many people doing great breakdowns out there. Reddit's going crazy, pulling out all these awesome little tidbits and pieces of information. I highly recommend you check out other people's stuff as well. I'm just one guy, we're just one channel picking things apart. But having said that, I decided to, instead of just break down the episode as sort of like all the things that happen and you sort of a paint by numbers approach, I'm going to choose to focus on a few things that I think are particularly interesting and might have to do with big plot points that I see coming down the road. Basically, I'm just telling you this breakdown video is going to be slightly different than the other breakdown videos you have seen, but I think that's all good, honestly. A lot of people doing great work about this show, tons of cool content out there on the internet, and that is really good for all nerds. Okay, so the first thing that I noticed in the episode is that it felt like the show was trying to convey this idea that the kids are not going to be able to be controlled by Wanda. It starts out with the kids crying. They're really bugging Wanda. Wanda really wants to sleep. This is something I think a lot of parents can relate to, but she's also willing to just try to use her powers to make them stop crying or go to sleep, and that doesn't work. Now, a couple of seemingly throwaway lines and things happen that I sort of want to focus on. Number 1, Vision is trying to get one of the children to go to sleep, and he remarks that Charles Darwin's Descent of Man is not actually good reading material, or it's not actually putting the child to sleep. And that's actually really interesting because if you know anything about that book, and I suggest you just at least go read a little Wikipedia article about it, the book basically has to do with all sorts of ideas when it comes to evolution, gender, sex, how society works, and things that are going on with individuals in sort of like an evolving sense. It's really bizarre and could speak to some of the larger concepts that are at play in this show. Of course, Agnes shows up to sort of save the day, and things get weird right away as Agnes says a couple of weird things like, I've got a few tricks up my sleeve, and it just seemed like the show was trying to convey the idea that Agnes is either in on this thing with Wanda or is aware of what's going on in ways that other characters are not. This is sort of really crystallized when she awkwardly says, after Vision is pushing back to Agnes actually being able to help and touch the children, Agnes just kind of looks away from Vision and just addresses Wanda and says, should we take this from the top? Kind of implying that, no, Agnes wants to touch the children. Vision needs to let her. They need to take this scene over again. This immediately sets up not only the weirdness between Wanda and Vision, as Vision questions this, seeing it for what it is, and Wanda's like just trying to get him to forget about it, right? But also it sets up the idea that Agnes is clearly in on whatever is happening in Westview. In fact, I want to bring up a seemingly insignificant detail that I am reading way too far into, and that is the fact that the crying actually does stop when Agnes breaks character and talks to Wanda. I don't know what that means, but to me it is implying that Agnes in some way is in control of the children, because she literally, when she breaks character, they stop crying. And in fact, if you pay attention very closely, it is not until after Wanda sort of laughs the thing off and then Agnes joins her in laughing the situation off that we hear not only the audience, but the crying of the children and all of the sounds of the WandaVision show return.
Fussy babies meet buns of steel.
To me, this is sort of implying that it wasn't until Agnes accepted that we're back that the children started to come back and cry. very interesting. And there's a lot of interplay in this scene where Vision is trying to get Wanda to reveal what's actually going on, and Agnes just seems to be distracting him. And at one point she says, don't mind me, I'm just looking for your dark liquor. Again, possibly just a throwaway line, but I dug way too far into that and started looking into the difference between like dark liquor and pure liquor. And if you know anything about this, again, just do a quick little Wikipedia thing. Clear liquors are considered to be more pure. There's more toxins and impurities in dark liquor. So, just sort of a subtle, another little meta thing going on there when Agnes interrupts Vision trying to get to the pure truth of the situation by, offering up or looking for dark liquor. Pretty interesting. Now, this scene resolves itself with the children actually being aged up, and this begins a very weird trend in which Agnes is always around when the children age up. And even in that very scene, Agnes says something to the effect of, "You can't control children, no matter how hard you try," sort of implying again that there's this weird interplay of who's controlling what in the WandaVision show within Westview. Now, the show next sort of pulls back into the perception of people with S.W.O.R.D. and mostly debriefing of Monica, and this is really weird. Like, she's talking about how scary it was, just how bizarre it was to be under Wanda's control. Now, we get some cool character development for the Monica Rambeau character here, and I actually really like what they're doing with this character. She's one of my favorites coming out of the show. Excited to see what they do, but there's little things like the fact that she holds a grudge against Carol Danvers, or the fact that her biocharts and blood work like don't show up for the S.W.O.R.D. people, and she's aware of this. This might imply that there's something different about her biometrics. Maybe this implies that she does have powers. I might do a whole video on that, but there's some interesting stuff going on there. But the S.W.O.R.D. discussion really comes to a head when the debriefing information that Monica provides allows Hayward to then formulate sort of a strategy, and they decide and are announcing that Wanda is the principal victimizer, right? They thought maybe she was a victim. Now they think she is the principal victimizer. And there's a lot of interesting interplay here that happens with them talking about Wanda, the Sokovia Accords, all kinds of interesting stuff, whether or not Wanda is a terrorist. And this, I think, sort of sets the stage for things that will be looming over Phase 4. I've talked a lot about this in other videos and on streams, and I will continue to do so. But coming out of Endgame, the world is going to turn into a very aggressive surveillance police state. People are going to be afraid. Obviously, the blip, Thanos, all of that stuff. It was crazy. The world is going to be in this very paranoid, dark place. And you can just see how Hayward and S.W.O.R.D. are approaching this thing with Wanda, right? They're not taking any chances. They want to stop her immediately. Oh, and on a side note, it is interesting that she's born in 1989, to apparently Oleg and Irina Maximoff in Sokovia. Not really sure what that means. I know a lot of us are holding out for some Magneto in this show. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen, but that was something that a lot of people are picking up on and trying to dissect the meaning of. Now, all the stuff with S.W.O.R.D. culminates in them revealing that they have this top secret information that Wanda broke into a S.W.O.R.D. facility 9 days ago, stole the corpse of Vision, came to New Jersey and resurrected him. Like, what? That's absolute insanity. And then after that, they break and they formulate the plan, and they get this plan that includes a drone that is actually from the time period that the current WandaVision show is airing, okay? Now, this is really interesting, and it culminates with the drone confronting Wanda. But before that happens, there is an entire scene with a dog. And this scene, again, is way more important than I think most people realize, because you come in on Billy and Tommy already having the dog. They're trying to wash the dog, clean the dog, and make him presentable because they want the dog. Now, they reveal in this scene that they heard the dog outside alone crying, okay? And so then they want the dog. Vision comes in, good morning, and it's like, oh, who's this dog or whatever, right? Then Agnes shows up with an actual doghouse fully prepared for what's happening. Vision even comments on it. And again, that interplay of Vision Agnes, and Wanda is really important to what's going on in all of these scenes, but it's just so interesting, and I think it's just clearly implied that Agnes creates the dog. She makes the dog out there for the children that she is in some ways controlling, and she's doing this to manipulate everybody, okay? And again, there becomes a wedge between Agnes's influence on the children and Vision's desire for the children. Vision says no dog until you're 10 years old, and then the children age themselves up right in front of everybody, including Agnes. It's just a very, very bizarre scene. And it again culminates with Vision questioning what is going on, questioning why Agnes is just allowed to know all of this stuff. And Wanda even says something in this scene where she says she's tired of hiding. Now, the scene with the dog and them aging up just kind of ends with Agnes just making a joke about hoping the dog doesn't get any bigger or change form. And then we cut back over to what's going on with Sword. Now, there's some interesting stuff here where they're sort of discovering, from the briefing, again, she's trying to figure out, Monica is, how to get into Westview. And this is where the idea from the drone comes in, and they get in there with the drone. Now, before they go in there, there is sort of this idea that they're rewriting reality, and there's a part where they realize that the outfit that was sort of transformed in WandaVision, the one that Monica was wearing, is actually her Kevlar armor that she goes in with that gets transformed. And literally, this is where you start to understand that Wanda is literally like creating reality. There's talk of the children. There's talk of it being real. There's a lot of interesting sort of metaphysical ideas going on here that are weird. Now, after this, we go back into WandaVision, but Vision is at work, and he's working on the computer with Norm. This is really interesting. They get an email that ends up being some message that Darcy sends to the people of WandaVision trying to warn them. There's mention of the Maximoff anomaly, talking about the actual happenings of the WandaVision show. And you just watch as Vision is, receiving this message, trying to put together what is going on. He then turns the computer off, realizing that he can still use his abilities, and then he uses his ability to shut down Wanda's manipulation of Norm, sort of freeing him. And this scene was terrifying. It was really frightening. Norm talks about how afraid he is. He's wondering how long it's been. He needs to call his sister. He wants to see his family. He's terrified. He's saying that Vision is the only one that can stop her, that she's in his head. It just really paints Wanda in a bad light. It's like, super bad look, Wanda. It doesn't look good for you.
Oh, that's actually the rest of your costume.
Now, back with the kids and Wanda at home, they're sort of doing tricks with the new dog, who they call Sparky, but they want to show Vision the tricks. And Wanda's like, your dad's at work. Now, this is really interesting, again, because the kids are like, it's Saturday. And Wanda at first just tries to lie to them, like she lies to everybody else in Westview. She's like, it's Monday. And they're like, no, it's not. It's Saturday. And this, again, shows that the kids can't be controlled by Wanda the same way everybody else can. This is fascinating. Now, this scene then culminates with the dog barking and being afraid and scared. And that's really interesting because I think the dog sort of represents Agnes and potentially either Nightmare or Mephisto or some hybrid character. So it's like that part of whatever's happening is afraid of whatever is coming, and that ends up being the drone, which is an outside force. Wanda, of course, is, just looking at the drone. She thinks it's all good. Monica's just trying to communicate with her, and then Hayward pulls a total douche move, takes it over, and again fires a missile at Wanda. Now, again, there's this breach thing. This is really, really crazy. Alarms go off. They go out there, and Wanda literally comes out. And this scene was so bizarre because she's not only in her actual Scarlet Witch outfit, but she seems to be using her Sokovian accent. She seems fully aware of everything that's going on. We see that the hex and the barrier between the real world and Westview is red and totally manipulated by Wanda. And again, I think this scene is just incredible. It really speaks for itself. A lot of people have talked about the parallels to Magneto's scene with the police in Days of Future Past. Very cool, man. A lot of like little similarities there, like father, like daughter sort of thing. It's kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, Wanda just comes out and she's a total boss, man. And she's reading everybody's mind. She kind of understands what's going on. Monica's like, you know what's going on. You let me, have the children or whatever. And a little bit of the reveal here is just that Wanda has what she wants. We think that would be Vision. And she's not going to ever let anybody take that away from her. And then she's like, this will be your only warning. She shows Hayward that she's a boss by having all of his Agnes' men turn on him, and then she just goes back in. It's pretty wild. Now, back inside, they're just looking for the dog. It's crazy. They're just looking for the dog, and the dog is lost, and then the dog ends up being dead. And I am just so sure that it is Agnes that killed the dog, and she is just trying to show, like, trouble or manipulate the kids or get them to age up faster. Something is there that she wants, again, with her being there, the dog, the children, and the manipulation. And this scene is so cool because I think the dog dying is clearly an aggregate or sort of an analogy or whatever for Vision, right? Because Wanda says some really crazy stuff about how there's things you can't just do. You can't just age up because it's convenient. You can't just reverse death no matter how sad it makes us. But that is obviously what she is doing. And interestingly enough, her children are pushing back against her and saying, you can do anything, Mom. Fix the dead. And then interestingly, Agnes seems to be really interested in that as well, saying you can actually do that. And then that's when Vision shows up. And then we have that same old interplay that we've been having the entire episode between Wanda, Vision, and Agnes. Who's really in control? Who's manipulating who? What is going on? That continues to play out. The dog is dead, and Vision is just like, it is the way that it is. Now we get to the end of the episode, which is a big fight between Wanda and Vision, a lover's quarrel, and Vision is pretty upset. He starts off by saying it's not every day you get a dog and bury it in the same day, just implying about how crazy and weird the whole day has been. He then goes right into talking about Norm and how he had freed Norm's mind. He says something to the effect of, I unearthed a man's suppressed personality, and I spoke to him free of your oversight. He was in pain, Wanda. Wanda tries to play this off. Vision says you can't control me like you control them. Wanda's like, can't I though? And credits start to roll. And Vision literally refuses to let the show end, which I found awesome, breaks through the credits and has a full-on fight with her talking about what is going on. Now, one thing I want to bring up in this scene that is subtle but might mean something significant is throughout the entire season, when we see Vision, even in his human form, he usually has his broad chest, the sort of almost armor-plated thing that, is just his broad robotic body. But in this scene, when he is fighting against Wanda and being very human and talking about how he's afraid, if you notice, his actual body is very human-like. There's not those broad shoulders. He seems almost skinny and frail and truly afraid. It's a really interesting visual cue. I wonder if it means anything more than that. Regardless, we sort of get to this place where Wanda's like, what do you think? I'm just controlling everything? And it's like, she can't even believe that. And she says something like, I don't know how any of this started in the first place. And the thing is, that doesn't match up with the feeling I got from the Wanda that walked out of the Westview bubble and confronted all of the sword people. I don't know what to believe. Does she know how this started? Is she still lying to Vision? Because it feels honest. It feels like when she says that, it's honest. She doesn't know how it started. Is that where Agnes and Mephisto possibly come in? Then something happens, a person shows up at the door, and very interestingly, another alarm sounds, which would imply that there was possibly a breach that took place. Wanda tries to assure Vision that she didn't do this. And again, I personally believe her in this moment, but Vision does not. And it's kind of a weird interplay here where Vision just can't believe her at this point. But she's like, that wasn't me. And I just feel like it was honest, man. And that this Quicksilver moment that we're about to talk about here was really not her doing, which is interesting. So then, of course, it happened. The Pietro reveal, and not just any Pietro, but Evan Peters' Pietro from the X-Men movies. And as many people have pointed out in their breakdowns and online, if you put the audio descriptive thing on Disney Plus, it literally indicates that it is Quicksilver from the Fox X-Men movies.
Brother in a time warp, say what?
What?
Or maybe it just says X-Men movies. Regardless, it says the version of Quicksilver from the X-Men movies. It's pretty clear what they're going for here.
She recast Pietro?
And even Darcy's like, she recast Pietro, assuming that it was Wanda. But remember, Wanda's saying that she didn't do this. Then there's the alarm of the breach, and there's the fact that I think Agnes could be at play here. And so what if Agnes or Mephisto or someone else actually brought Pietro into this reality, because this Pietro right from the rip seems really nefarious and not like a character that Wanda can control. In fact, from the leaked footage of the mid-season trailer that proved that Evan Peters would be in the show, he's actually talking about how her dead husband can't die again. This implies that this character knows of what's actually going on in the WandaVision show and is also not afraid of Wanda, because Wanda hits him with a blast. She doesn't just manipulate him. She doesn't just change his mind. She hits him with a blast of her power, meaning she can't just control him. So what does that mean? I think it implies that this character came from outside of Westview, that this character is the actual Evan Peters character from the Fox X-Men films. Who knows for sure, but it's crazy regardless. And that's just the broad strokes of like interesting stuff that I'm sort of latched onto. There's all kinds of crazy stuff like who was the person that was the astrophysicist that Monica reached out to. There's all sorts of like little things that are still going to be explored in the episode. And of course, all of the questions about Evan Peters and what that means. We're going to be exploring that on streams, on videos, talking about it as it comes out. I think it has to do with the multiverse of madness. I think it has to do with the things we're hearing about Spider-Man 3. I think it has to do with J. Jonah Jameson being in Far From Home. I think it has to do with Michael Keaton being in Morbius. I think all of these things are connected, and we will be talking about that in future videos. But for now, this was a crazy video and a crazy edit. Holy crap, Elisa, you're amazing. This was probably so much work. I'm so sorry. Blame Kevin Feige, though, not me. Of course, let us know what you think about the episode, all the Easter eggs, and if we missed anything, let us know all of that in the comment section below. And as I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.